So hello everyone, we have today Faisal Zahid with us, who's the co-founder of Zarya, and I'm excited to hear about his story, and let's see what we gain out of the entire journey of Zarya so far. So welcome Faisal on the show. Excited to have you over here. So how about you take a bit of time and introduce yourself, your background, and then we talk about Zarya a little bit more.
Thank you for having me. So Faisal is my name. We started Zarya a little over 6 months ago. We announced our fundraise recently, and it's in the social commerce space.
We'll come to Zarya, but what about your personal background?
So I am a product manager by craft.
Okay.
Was one of the early product team members in Kareem, and then moved to a few other startups. Was with this autonomous driving startup, and then a grocery startup for the last 1 year before I joined Zarya.
In Pakistan or abroad?
So this is all based out of UAE.
Okay, UAE.
UAE is, it started off before Kareem at consultancy sort of services. But for the better half of the last 6 years, UAE has sort of become a hub for tech for the region. Kareem kind of seeded that a little bit. But then there are a lot of other companies which aren't even based in UAE, but they're setting up their tech hub in UAE. So that's what we were doing for the better half of the last 6 years.
And by craft, you're a product manager, and by education?
An engineer.
An engineer.
Systems engineer.
Systems engineer, okay.
Yeah, but you barely ever end up doing what you started off.
Absolutely. I'm an electrical engineer doing, I don't know if I've ever hardly done electrical engineering. Electrical engineering, computer science guy, and I'm not sure doing what. So, okay, so great. So you spend a good time creating products, and then you are the one who's doing a lot of product decisions in Zarya, I'm assuming.
So in Zarya, I take care of the tech side of the org and the growth, our demand side of the org.
Okay. Who's your co-founder? How you made your founding team?
So my co-founder actually also happens to be my brother.
Okay.
We've had a very similar...
Is he an elder or younger?
He's the younger one. I'm the older one.
Okay.
So we have obviously very similar upbringings, but after college, we kind of went into very different directions. I went into the tech world and the professional world, and then he ran, operations for family businesses. So I needed someone who, when this came about, when we were figuring out what we should do, and I was talking to my mentors and other people in the industry, I needed someone who I had good cohesion with, but someone who also complemented the skills that I brought to the table.
Sure.
And it was very fortunate. We were very lucky that it happened to be my brother.
So what's your age gap with your brother?
A year and a half.
Normally तो वैसे होता है कि छोटा भाई जो कहते हैं यार डॉगी हो जाता है हमारे उसमें, तो आपके केस में ऐसा नहीं है.
हमारे यहाँ तो we're so close in age that it's almost like we're twins, I guess.
Yeah.
We have very defined kind of roles, like we grew up together, so we kind of were very close as well. So like we would dive together, for example, scuba dive करते थे हम, and it's just natural to do that together. So इधर भी काफी naturally we, it started off as a conversation. That this is something we should do, and then I don't know when it became Zarya.
So what is Zarya? Talk to us about Zarya. What is the app? What problem does it solve? How the idea came up, and so on.
So over the last few years, you have a lot of social commerce taking place. So selling, loosely defined, it's selling happening on social media, and
so by social media, it could be WhatsApp, it could be Facebook, it could be Instagram.
So it means slightly different things in different places. So in China, it is, you don't have the Facebook and WhatsApp. So they've defined it somewhat differently. In Pakistan, it's mostly Facebook and WhatsApp, jahan social selling ho rahi hai.
Yeah.
And in the last year and a half, it's actually started happening a lot more. Especially COVID ke times mein, a lot of the people who were physical social networks mein sell kar rahe the, they've kind of moved at least their catalog onto Facebook Marketplace or something.
Right.
And WhatsApp पे उनकी broadcasting group. तो वो तो accelerate हो गई है, and these people tend to, which majority are women. This is what we've seen, at least in our, the people, users that we have, they're mostly
Absolutely,
women.
it happens all the time. My wife and her friend is also into social selling, and so yeah, I can relate to that.
And it's becoming quite common, and I didn't realize that this was becoming such a thing till we kind of looked into this. But these social sellers or our users, they typically need to not just do the selling, but they also need to focus on a lot of other things. So there's...
I always wonder why didn't WhatsApp actually has made tools, and now they're doing it a bit that to kind of facilitate this social selling a lot? I mean, they're doing it, but not at a pace probably we would like them to do it.
So I think what I had also been hearing through the network in 2020 and late 19 is that a lot of these guys have not moved away from their conventional monetization strategies till recently. Google हो गया, आपका Facebook है, and वो monetization वो भी ad revenue से ही आ रहा था. And I think in the last year or 2 years they've started investing in it. So Facebook invested in marketplace, Instagram की भी वो shop आनी शुरू
And
हुई.
WhatsApp has started doing social selling in India at least. Right?
Yes. So they've started, and Google acquired. So ये आपका YouTube actually, YouTube doesn't do any acquisitions,
right.
but they acquired SimSim, and so I think they've turned their heads now to start thinking कि सिर्फ ad revenue से नहीं हमने पैसे कमाने. We also should look at other, and this is commerce is where this is at. तो मतलब I think this is the time when they've turned. वहाँ से growth कम हो रही होगी, तुमने बोला होगा यहाँ पर.
Sure. So you were telling me something about a difference between a social commerce and e-commerce in developing economy versus developed economy. So what is that?
This is still being defined. What really is social commerce? But
So what is social commerce for you?
Social commerce for us is any sort of selling or commerce happening through some social channels.
Okay.
You could even make it more broadly defined by a combination of physical and digital social channels. But this is something that is getting defined in the last few years. E-commerce, essentially, you could say that e-commerce encapsulates both social commerce and the conventional e-commerce. Or you
depending upon if e-commerce facilitate social part of the commerce, then we can say that e-commerce encapsulate both commerce and social part.
Well, if social selling is happening on social media and you're transacting on social media, what's to say that that's any different than someone going on a website and transacting, right? So physical social commerce, I guess you could say that's not e-commerce. So that part of social commerce, maybe you can say that comes outside, but yeah, अगर वो digital हो रहा है तो फिर that's a social commerce is a part of e-commerce. So what we're seeing is in a developed part of the world, it is growing a lot faster than it is, the other way around.
The developing part.
The developing part of the world. जहाँ e-commerce इतना ज़्यादा develop नहीं हो चुका. And there are a bunch of reasons. One is the head start that conventional e-commerce has over social commerce is a lot less in the developing part of the world. So Latin America ho gaya, Egypt and GCC, India, China and Far East Asia. Other e-commerce is not as mature as it is in Europe or Western Europe or North America. तो एक तो ये reason है, दूसरा ये कि इन economies में for whatever reason social media में लोग बहुत ज़्यादा time spend करते हैं. So there was this statistics by, I don't want to misquote, so I don't quite remember. It was either Statista or VR Social, and उस graph में अगर आप देखें तो the world average, they had this bar chart. The world average was smack in the middle, and the developing part of the world were on one side and the developed on the other. So
ज़्यादा वेले होते हैं क्या होता है?
I guess maybe यही होता होगा. साढ़े तीन घंटे का average है, and 2 घंटे का उधर average है developed part. So if you're going to spend so much more time, then you're bound to start transacting on those channels, So this is happening, and when people look to social commerce, they usually look at Mishu. Even though, interestingly enough, China's biggest social commerce player is much bigger. Pinduoduo is the fastest growing tech company in the world, but they do it very differently because वहाँ पर वही social media channels नहीं है जो the rest of the world has. So they've defined it in their own way. So when you look to someone, then even though that is, I think, probably at least 50 times as much bigger than what Mishu is, but when I talk to my peers in Latin America and a few others, वो सारे Mishu का नाम लेते हैं. वो कहते हैं हाँ Mishu is the one, because for all practical reasons, as far as all of us are concerned, they pioneered it. So there are quite a few players coming up in this space, B2B social commerce. It's
so
an interesting
Zarya is a way of doing social commerce. Talk to us a bit more about how it's designed, what features does it have, what problems does it solve?
So anyone who's looking to sell has to do a set of things. So they need to actually make the sale. they need to source the product, they need to put working capital against that product because they'll go and buy it, and then they need to buy किया के साथ, Trax के साथ, or whoever आजकल तो ये logistics players बहुत आगे हैं, उनके साथ उनको dealing भी करनी होती है, and they have to kind of fulfill those products. So what we do, पहले के अलावा जो बाकी सारे the ones I stated, we solve that problem for people. They do the selling, we source it for them, we provide them all those products on an app. When they make a sale, they can transact on, place an order, and we fulfill that item.
So let's assume that I am one of a social seller, and let's say I sell shirts. So I mean, do I have to tell you that these are the shirts I want to sell and then you'll procure it, or I'll have to pick something that is already in your catalog and start selling? So how it works?
So whatever we have on the catalog, we do take feedback from people because उसी से पता लगता है क्योंकि इसकी tail इतनी long होती है. There's so much stuff which is being sold. Yeah. Whatever we provide on our catalog is available with us, and we provide our sellers with the content. So the images होती हैं, जो भी description होती है,
so
and they use that and post it.
Essentially, you select the inventory. You select the catalog.
We curate supply.
You curate supply, and so is it again to you? You have now a bunch of, you have crowdsourced your selling.
From our perspective.
Yeah.
I guess from our perspective, you could say that we've crowdsourced or outsourced our basically sales team, right. And they are interfacing with the customer.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's an interesting way to look at it when you look at it from our perspective.
Right.
But we actually look at them as a user and we're serving them. Right. So that's why, yeah, this is, but yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, so how for a social seller, how the app works? So I go out and create a store on your app, my own store, and then I try to kind of propagate the information about it through my channels, or you also provide a social channel or a conversational channel within your app. What does it do for me as a seller?
So we're a digital wholesaler for them. So what they need to do is they log in and they just give us their number. OTP वो अपना verify करते हैं, and then they come on the page जहाँ पर उनको catalog दिखता है. They choose whatever catalog, whichever items they want to broadcast, sell, or talk about with their customers, and they will take that content from our app and then broadcast it. अब जब उनकी sale हो जाएगी तो वो फिर हमारे platform में order place कर देंगे. They can do it on whatever platform they want.
Okay, so let's assume that you have a catalog of shoes, and I pick some shoes, and then on my WhatsApp group I post the pictures that I have these shoes at this XYZ price, and then if someone places an order with me, I'll go back to your app, place it over there. Okay.
But we also have, this is one style, and there's another style of social selling as well, and this is typically with people who know the items, right. And they've been doing this for a while. वो क्या करते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ typically कुछ ऐसी lines भी आती हैं जो बार-बार नहीं आ रही होती. So let's say one of these brands release something which winter wear का start of the season है, and sellers know that this is going to sell. So वो एक दफ़ा उठा के अपने पास भी accumulate कर लेते हैं.
सही है.
And then वो फिर live stream करते हुए they just take it and then they show it to their sellers.
But can I also come to Zarya app and buy directly from you? So do you compete with your sellers in a way?
No way for us to know whether you're a seller or not.
Right.
Because a lot of the sellers, when they start off, they have the same behaviors that a customer would. Because वो एक item लेते हैं, they want to test, they want to see if the service is reliable है या नहीं. तो हम उस तरह से, we don't create barriers for someone who may want to use them, but we don't actively go and target users, because then we're going to be cannibalizing the business for someone whose problem we're trying to solve. But if you would like to go and buy something, you could download the app, but we are not marketing it in that way. We're not pushing it in those customer channels. So
eventually the end customer will get a tag of my brand or your brand on the product.
That is going to be neither of ours. It's going to be the item ka brand.
Yeah, but let's assume my shop's name is UJ's shop or whatever, and instead of going and buying at home market, I source it from Zarya, and when Zarya ships it to my end customer, I want them to put up a sticker on it or a tag on it which says UJ's shop. It may be a chair or something which they can also buy. but at least I am propagating my brand as well. So does that happen, or does Zarya's brand gets promoted?
At this point in time, we don't provide a private label, because then what you're talking about is a white labeling, and you could have your brand and you could be selling the same, and another individual could be doing the same. We don't offer that yet. It is something that we've spoken about, but we'll reconsider it at a later stage. But right now, जो brands already available हैं, वही हमने available कर दी हैं अपनी app में.
Sure.
And उनकी retail price है, and what the price, because we have to offer at wholesale rates, we need to give them a cushion to be able to make a margin in the middle. तो वो उन्हीं brand उसी tag पे उठा के.
So essentially, you are saving money by buying it from a wholesale or even from a manufacturer, and then the retail is done by your user, so they are making that margin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So conventionally, a B2C player would keep that entire for themselves, and they would spend a lot more on subsidies and and others. In this model, we essentially provide it to them at as wholesale rates as possible. That's another very relative term. Ke matlab, what is a wholesale rate?
Yeah.
So that's the model for us.
So talk to me about the current traction on your platform, how the traffic is growing, how the sales are going, if you would like to discuss that part.
So we're actually in the process of moving away from bootstrapping to the scale mode, and so we are getting a lot of traction and people coming on our platform. We want to ensure that we do that with very good fulfillment rates. And actually today we move into our campus and warehouse where we are going to be actually consolidating all of our products, ताकि वो हम 24 hours में या 48 hours में आगे fulfill कर दें, and कुछ chances कम हो कि वो return ना हो जाए हमारे पास. So we just have to focus on that over the span of the next quarter or so.
Zarya manages return as well, I mean.
So it manages return in the sense that typically whatever the supplier's return policy is now, we do the same. So if for example, one of the brands which is listed on Product Sapphire, if they don't offer returns unless it's damaged, then we serve the things, same thing. Because we also have to be mindful of a lot of these, because if we're stocking brands,
but in e-commerce, a lot of orders, or in social commerce, a lot of orders get cancelled at the very end, or things get returned. So, and that actually adds to the cost of the doing business. So how you're dealing with that?
So no-shows typically, I think what you're referring to is no-shows because someone doesn't receive the product.
Yeah.
That is not very high at this point in time, especially because a lot of our orders are from sellers, jinki frequency of orders high hoti hai, and they have a relationship with someone. It's not someone who's just landed on the web page. This can become a problem later on because I've spoken to our peers in the same space. As you scale, this does become a problem. A lot of our orders is going into the country rather than just the KLI. वहाँ पर fulfillment थोड़ी सी मुश्किल होती है. It's tougher because it's a little bit more rural, but it's not a problem as yet. It may become in the future, I would say.
So if you want to share, how many orders right now you are at in terms of monthly moving or GMV or where you are?
This is something that we haven't typically publicly
it's your
shared.
Prerogative. I'm just asking. Okay. So tell us more about your funding journey. How did you manage to raise initial funding, and what were the different steps? Who you reached out to? What were the challenges, problems that you faced during the funding, and or how easy or difficult the process was?
So at the early stages, it's...
You started 6 months back?
June में we started our product, हमने release किया था. MVP May में थोड़ा सा test किया, June में हमने release किया, and I believe July में we decided to go into fundraising, and then August May we kind of closed. And
so
then
have you done fundraising before?
This was the first time. This was the first time.
This was the first time.
But I was very lucky in the sense that there were a lot of people in my network, जो करीम में थे, who guided us on certain elements. Some of them are even VCs. Actually, 2 of our investors, I knew them from Kareem. Our lead investor, उनमें जो अभी partner हैं, he was actually my boss at some point in time at Kareem. And there's another, the American investor who's Class 5 Ventures. उसमें जो Zach है, he was basically doing something similar in Kareem too. So I knew him then as well. And बाकी सारे वो फिर relationship इसलिए वो थोड़ा आसान हो गया था. It wasn't, you know, everyone has their own journey. So we were very lucky to have not just those relationships, but also others who told us the things that you should and shouldn't do, and how you should go about certain things, which kind of becomes challenging if you make a mistake and then you put someone off.
So any quick lessons for the founders looking at our show and want to see how the funding is? What is the right way of going about funding?
That's because there's just so many layers to that, to an answer like that. They want to, at this early stage, a lot of the investors, if not all of them, they really care about the founders, the story, and the problem.
Yeah.
And they know कि a lot of the times वो आपने खुद ही figure नहीं किया होता तो you know you're bound to, you know, have difficult times. So they want to be able to deal with someone जो उनको in a space that they would like to deal with, and they think that is the team which is going to take it forward. So even though initial commercial traction is important, but at this stage they're looking for someone जिनसे उनका wavelength match हो जाए. I think this is one thing that.
So how many rounds did you go through? I mean, did you do angel or self-funded bootstrapping before raising this pre-seed?
So we bootstrapped it till we raised in August.
So you bootstrapped it to make product as well as initial traction as well?
Yes. We made an app. It was fairly low key. We made an app. We kind of product हमने source करना शुरू कर दिया जो कुछ list कर लिया. We were trying to be, you know, inventive about it or innovative about that. So yeah, we bootstrapped it, and then pre-seed was the first raise we had.
Okay, that's $1.7 million.
$1.7 million, yes.
Any particular evaluation cap, or if it's a public information?
That's also something we haven't.
Okay.
But yes, it was जो standard होता है.
So you're right now focusing on Pakistan, or it's Pakistan, MENA?
We're starting with Pakistan. We do want to go out into, but I think once we hit PMF and we start hitting scaling, that would probably be the right time for us to look outward. But at this point in time, this is such a big market, and this is where home turf is for us.
So who are your competitors in this market?
Typically, you know, real competitors offline वाले हैं ज़्यादातर at this stage. There are a few startups which have come up, but we've heard of them through this, you know, startup ecosystem rather than our sellers or our users. So our users की वो typical आपके जो wholesalers होते हैं ना, वो उन्हीं के नाम लाते हैं कि ये वाला wholesaler इतने का दे रहा है. So I consider at this stage more them the competitors than others. But we're in the early stages of social selling life cycle.
Right.
In the next 6 months to a year, I do see others coming up in this space.
So you right now your majority of your sourcing or your customers are based out of Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, or Karachi for that matter, or it's kind of uniformly distributed?
It's quite uniformly distributed. Karachi and Lahore obviously has a big portion. And what we're seeing, a lot of sellers are, you know, in these markets, product does end up going more into the rural part of the country.
Sure.
But yeah, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad is such a big population.
And the initial hypothesis or kind of perception that women will be more interested in that, is that happening or not?
It is, but it's also, I think we also need to explore outside as well. It's also somewhat self-fulfilling, because आप जो item source करेंगे, जो provide करेंगे, वो तो हमारे women items ही ज़्यादातर हम source करते हैं. तो yes, that hypothesis has turned out to be true.
Okay.
Yeah, because अब, you know, if you go to social selling channel, वही बिक रहा होता है product, and women ही typically बेच रही होती हैं. And I think it's great though, like, you know, women who don't have access to you know, or are unable or don't want to do a job, this becomes a very good side hustle. For some of our users, they're the breadwinners.
Right.
And we're just enabling them, and they've been doing this despite us being, you know, the ones who are breadwinners who've been doing this for years. We've just started. They've been hustling and doing this, which is pretty great.
एक और e-commerce के अंदर बहुत सारे, especially when you are into social selling and all that, there's a lot of undocumented and untaxed economy और इस तरह के बहुत सारे problems आते हैं, तो उनको कैसे handle कर रहे हो?
So you mean from
So for instance, मतलब I have seen a lot of even women, they are doing selling by sourcing products from abroad, and जहाँ पे उनके कोई friend वगैरह भेज देती है और यहाँ पे वो दे देती हैं, but then it's not documented, and even they do not know the way to make it documented.
Yeah.
So are these the problem that you are also facing, or because you are just providing everything, so this has already been taken care of within the pricing, documentation, collection, everything has already been taken care of?
So we're sourcing from formal suppliers.
Right.
So one, by design, we are compliant.
Okay.
With all of this. So by design, even our sellers, when उनको जो wholesale price provide करते हैं, वो फिर compliant of these tax related matters होती हैं. So it hasn't been a problem, but it does become a challenge because from the supply point of view, you can get a better rate अगर आप वो undocumented चीज़ें ले लें. But that is not something we can do and we would want to do.
Right.
Given what we are trying to build. So we have to work with it. फिर वो unit economics पे slight advantage हो जाती है compared to someone who's not willing to do that. But that's.
So how big a team you are right now?
September, so we ended at just under 20. I think abhi close to just under 25.
Primarily based out of Lahore or what?
Our engineering team is being built out of Karachi.
Okay.
Our growth team is also being built out of Karachi.
Okay.
Our online growth.
Sure.
Warehousing and merchandising, operations, fulfillment, that's Lahore.
Okay.
Lahore is the consumption capital of Pakistan. It's at the epicenter of where most of the consumption is happening from what we've seen. And वो लाहौर ही आते हैं पंजाब से, per capita GDP सबसे high इधर है. You know, a lot of the suppliers जो Karachi based हैं, their biggest sales teams are also in Lahore. So we thought it was the better option for us to have this out of.
So क्या goals हैं 2 years, 1 year में, where you see yourself?
You know, we want to be able to provide a very wide catalog to all sorts of social sellers. I think
right now, how big is your catalog? How many items are there?
So I have to look at this month, November, kaise close hua. I haven't run that yet, but as of a few weeks ago, it was 3,000 SKUs.
Okay.
And this is including the options and sizes.
Sure.
Which in itself is big. Well, you know, when you get such a big SKU, then you have to figure out how to not bury certain important ones. So yeah, we are at 3,000. We need to expand that and kind of learn what works, what doesn't work, and kind of be able to serve everyone.
Okay. So it was great talking to Faisal today about Zarya, and I hope that everyone will enjoy this show and learn a thing or two out of it. Thank you, Faisal, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.